All right, let's get our Facebook folks in here and we can start the show. Get the ball rolling. All right, there we go. All five. Good stuff. Welcome in as Carl coughs as the show's rolling here. I am Nick Kendell, joined by Carl Dumler for Building the Broncos. It is Tuesday evening, and we're here officially, the offseason for everybody in the NFL. Carl, before we even get into our topic today, Field Yates releases mock draft 3.0, some Broncos coaching stuff to talk about as well, but wanted to get your takeaway from the Super Bowl since we haven't had much of a chance to talk about it yet.
Well, I mean, obviously I'm a little bit happy. I mean, who wouldn't be? I was watching something. It was something from like the Minions, and they were saying, "Oh, hey, Eagles won the Super Bowl," and like nobody cheers in the crowd. And then he goes, "The Chiefs lost," and everybody goes crazy. That's pretty much what it was. And to see them get embarrassed that bad, kind of wipes away at least a little bit of that 2013 season, 2014 Super Bowl for the Broncos against the Seahawks. At least we're not the only team that's looked that bad. So it makes me feel a little bit better about that. And, I have a group that I meet with on Monday, and those Chiefs fans were messaging me the entire week. And they did not show up on Monday to the group.
Oh, tail between the legs. Coward.
Yeah. I know. It was one of those moments. And, I had one of them right when the game started. He's like, "Oh, here we go." And by the end of the game, he was like, "I'm not doing very good. I might need to talk." So,
oh man,
I felt bad, but no, I being surrounded by Chiefs fans, it does feel pretty good to see them have at least a little bit of a bummer for once. It's been a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure you guys are coming in, clicking the thumbs up on the way and subscribing if you haven't already. And I see we got Phil McLaughlin with the Wow React in there as well. Happy recently belated birthday there, Phil. So hope you're doing well. Appreciate you coming in. Hope you had another good trip around the sun. We got our guy Papa Bear, David Mickelrath, coming in. $5 super. Thank you so much, David. We really do appreciate that. He's talking about the headliner for the show here, Field Yates mock draft with the Broncos going Ashton Jeanty, running back out of Boise State, Heisman runner-up. David says, that would be awesome. Good evening, Broncos country. # let's go, Bo. Let's go, David. Again, thank you so much for coming in. And, it's every show that you're coming in and supporting us as well. So, I mean, that means a lot, just the consistency, the support from the bottom of our hearts, man, David, our apex of the heart. We really do appreciate that. We also got David Youngkin. David will hop in, and he can't even stay half the time, but he'll come in and also support us and early as well. He says, no disrespect to ESPN, but I want the stuff they are smoking. My prediction for the season, 11-6, 12-5. I think he must be talking about the power rankings from ESPN, not necessarily the draft, where I think Denver ranked 14th in the power rankings. I feel like I don't know. I don't think that's egregious, right? I think that right now with last season, to the moon with how it feels for Broncos country, right? But you had a lot of health last season. You didn't do so well in one-score games. Maybe that bounces back. There's also not a guarantee that Bo takes another step next season. He could stagnate. He could hit, CJ Stroud to the moon before last offseason, right? And then things kind of fell apart. So I don't think 14 is egregious. I would have to sit down and actually look at the teams. I think probably anywhere from 9 to 15 makes sense, I think, on paper for the Broncos. But, where were they last season, too? 31st, number one odds to get number one pick by a lot of teams. We'll see. I think Vegas right now, if I was setting the Vegas line right now, just because they're pretty conservative typically with the lines, I think it probably will be 9.5. Yeah. But that's like a good line. Like last year, there was only like 6 or 7 teams, 8 teams that had 9.5 or better. So that's not a bad line.
Right. One, you still think about the division. Chiefs are still good. I think they're going to take some steps back because they're losing a lot of talent. They are very top heavy cap wise. Their draft picks haven't panned out as much as some of them before.
They have not.
And so I do think there's a chance the Chiefs could come back a little bit. But we're talking about going from 2-time Super Bowl champions and making the Super Bowl to playoff team kind of thing. Chargers, another team that's on the up and up. So that's 4 of your games every year against playoff caliber teams.
Yep.
I think you're playing the NFC East this next year.
I think it's the North.
Is it the North? Okay, well, still either.
It might be the East, actually. I think we definitely play I think, never mind. It's not the North because we play the Packers as our cross conference because we ranked the same as them. So I don't think it's the NFC North. It must be the NFC East because it's not the South. It's not the West yet. I think it is. I think you're right. I think it is the East. Somebody in the chat can let us know. But either way, that's tough.
Yeah, you got
tough.
Super Bowl champs. Washington is very much on their way up.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a great game to see Daniels versus Knicks. That I'm excited for that one. And Cowboys, who knows exactly what they're going to be. Giants, you can't get much worse than what they've been. So they probably are possibly on their way up. They might be one of those teams taking a rookie quarterback. So like I said, you're going to have a decently tough schedule. And then you said the Packers. That's another really, really good team. So it's going to be, I think there's a really good chance Broncos get to the double-digit wins again. It's just a matter of how much can they really improve. It's going to take an incredible draft, another great free agency where all those guys hit and become big-time contributors. You know, this last year, Broncos got very fortunate. Like Malcolm Roach played beyond what anybody thought he would play. John Franklin Myers played at an incredible level. I'm trying to think of some of their other big. Jones for safety was another that played really, really well for them. You know, so a lot of their free agents that came in were nice contributors for the Broncos. And not every year do you have that happen. So I think it's possible because I think the Broncos have a great front office. I think they've got a great coaching staff. They can get a lot out of players. But it's season to season until we really know for sure Bo Nix is a consistent top 10 quarterback. Then we can start saying 10 wins is the floor. Now let's see what the rest of the roster does to build it up from there.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. Any other takeaways? But first, Michael Ronquillo saying, good evening, Nick and Carl on building the Broncos. Go Bo Broncos. At some point, we'll have a chance to look ahead to the division because I agree with you about the conversation about the Chiefs. Their draft picks, for the most part, have not really hit. Rashee Rice is going to be coming off a pretty significant injury. Is he going to be suspended also for his offseason conduct last year? They're going to be losing Bolton and Reed. They're going to have to pay McDuffie here coming up at some point. Chris Jones, a year older. Trey Smith. They have to figure out offensive tackle. I mean, Chiefs are still the Chiefs because they have Reed and Mahomes, right? And Spagnuolo still, which wish somebody would pick him off. But they're vulnerable right now. They bleed. And we kind of saw them skirt by this season with Mahomes, but they lacked an explosive run game. I mean, there's a chance for Denver next season to knock them. And you can't always say that, right? When you have Mahomes, you know, there was some like Brady down seasons as well during their dynasty as well. So really an important season for Denver to take advantage because it does look like on paper, Kansas City could be heading towards a record regression, but they're always going to be formidable as long as Reed, Spagnuolo, and obviously Mahomes are there. But thank you so much, of course, to our guy, again, Michael Ronquillo. Thank you so much. One of our top dogs in here, never an underdog in any of the shows for Mile High Huddle, but especially building the Broncos.
And speaking of underdog, this basketball season, when your favorite star scores a bucket, we're alley-ooping you an opportunity to win money from watching sports with Underdog. Underdog is one of the leading sports apps, and you can play now in your state. Do you want to win up to 1,000 times your money? You can with Underdog.
To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, like points, assists, rebounds, and more. Underdog's got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all basketball picks or mix and match across other sports. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into 1,000 just with your hoops knowledge.
Download the Underdog app and sign up now using the promo code MHUDDLE to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with the promo code MHUDDLE. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon first deposit.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. All righty. Well, business done. Thanks again Underdog M Huddle. Use that code. Appreciate everyone coming in here today. We also got more coming in. Phil McLaughlin with the Wow React and now the Super Chat over on Facebook. Thank you so much, Phil. It says, good evening. Nick, Carl, and Deacon Scott survived my birthday. That's great, Phil. I'm happy to hear that. You and I both Aquarius. I don't whatever the heck that means. I don't know. Just we have our own song, right? They sing at the end of a 4-Year-Old Virgin. That's all I know. But yeah, good to hear you survived it. And he said, looking ahead to our schedule next season, I'm thinking 10-7 if we hit draft and free agency. I mean, they could be, honest to God, they could be 12-5, right? Bo Nix takes another step. You find some offensive weaponry. You stay healthy. You have patched some holes and actually add starting caliber players at linebacker. Things can change quickly, but still a young team. There's a lot of stability in next season because they're not losing a lot of guys, but there's also still a lot of volatility. It is the NFL after all. So 10-7, you're probably going to want to take the Vegas over. We'll see what the lines are after, the draft and everything. But it's the reason for optimism next season for Broncos country. No doubt. You got a lot of pillars set to build upon.
And speaking of the draft, since this is our subject tonight, let's say somehow, some way, this guy named Ashton Jeanty falls to the Broncos at pick 20, like Yates just predicted. I mean, it's not really a prediction. It's just doing a mock draft. But a top 5, top 7 player in this draft, making it to that spot, mostly because, well, 2 reasons: depth of the position and value of the position. So how much would that change the Broncos, in your opinion, if Ashton Jeanty was the running back for this offense next year?
I think it would make it so the floor of your offense is probably at worst the 16th EPA per play, whatever ranking you want to have up there. Last season, your number 2 target getter in the offense was Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams was the number 5 or 6 target earner in terms of running backs in the pass game. And also, obviously, your number 1 back in terms of carries. So having Jeanty come in would change things tremendously as far as just the overall floor of the team and the ceiling as well. The ceiling is really going to be determined about Bo Nix drop back pass game. Can he operate and maneuver the pocket? That's going to be on the ceiling, more of the ceiling conversation for me. But Jeanty's going to help the team a heck of a lot. Why does he fall to 20? You kind of already talked about it. This is a very talented, deep running back class. Now, I say that I don't know how many true 3-down potential backs there are that can do, everything well. Now, granted, those guys go in the first round, but I think there's a lot of niche kind of guys that can be in a committee, and that's true for most backfields in the NFL now. But Jeanty can do a little bit of everything. Really talented. Again, why might he be there? It's deep this season. You're not really getting good surplus value on the contract for a running back first round historically. That's one reason that you might see a guy like that fall. Also, he's had a bleep ton of carries at Boise, not even carries, touches at Boise State. So there's going to be some questions about the shelf life with him. It's not like, Josh Jacobs coming out where hardly any touches because he was protected a lot by the guys around him and in front of him. So you're going to have some questions about the tread on the tire and where that cliff is at for him. Also, he's not necessarily running back body beautiful. He's a little bit small, shorter. I mean, he's built. He looks like Doug Martin. I know that's a stupid, easy comp because they're both Boise State guys, but low to the ground, really stocky, well built, but he's not going to mistake anybody for Adrian Peterson there. I don't think the comp is necessarily Doug Martin. I don't think it's a horrible comp. It's just if Doug Martin actually had long speed and a little bit more fluidity. I mean, he's really a hard player to comp because the balance, the pacing, the vision is all good in a shorter package. So I don't really have a slam dunk comparison for him right now, but he's a heck of a player. And I will say we've seen, it's not just Field Yates who had Jeanty fall into the 20th pick, but we've also had Mel Kiper predict that. We've had Fran Duffy, who does a heck of a job covering the NFL draft with a lot of connections. We've had also Dane Brugler mock Ashton Jeanty at 20. So I know release that no matter what, when you talk about mock drafts or anything, there's going to be half the people that say it's too early. Half the people are going to say it's too soon. So you just really never know. But no, he's a heck of a back. And I think I said last week on this show, or one of the ones with Scott, I think he's my ideal pick for the Broncos at 20 right now, outside of in terms of somewhat level of realism.
How many players would you have ranked ahead of him that you would say, I would take this player over him if he fell to 20?
My gosh. Travis Hunter, Of course, I have to pull up a big board because off the top of my head, Abdul Carter. I know that we don't need an edge, but like, give me Abdul Carter. I don't care.
Right.
Mason Graham would be up there, interior defensive lineman from Michigan. I probably would also have Teteroa McMillan up there. I still need to kind of come to my final evaluation for Jalen Walker, but he'd be up there as well because I think he's going to be an unbelievable edge rusher from them. And after that, I mean, it gets a little thinner and thinner. I don't know if there's somebody. I'm neck and neck with Tyler Warren and him right now, just because the size profile and everything that Warren brings as well. But man, Jeanty's up there for me. I don't think he's going to be a fit for every single team, but I also think that he's probably just, I'm a running backs don't matter guy, but I was also running backs don't matter guy for like Christian McCaffrey. It's like, I'd be happy with what did Denver have that season? 20 overall. I think that was the Garrett Bowles draft. I'm like, if you fell to 20, heck yes, you take him. I'm not giving up 2 firsts to go in the top 10 for him. Saquon Barkley, when Denver had the 5th pick, I'm like, Barkley's amazing. I don't know about using the 5th overall for a team with where they're at in the team building process right now. Denver was picking 10, 15. Heck yeah, sign me up. So that's where I'm at with Jeanty. If he falls to 20, he's simply too good. And the only reason he's even available is because of how the league views the position, even if they're having a renaissance this season.
Yeah, it's like I said, there's probably only going to be about 6 or 7 names I would take ahead of him. I was going to ask another one, like Luther Burden. Would you take him ahead of Burden?
I probably would right now, but that's just because, I don't know, Burden kind of scared me a little bit this season. I don't know if he's actually a very good / nuanced route runner. That doesn't mean he can't be. I think maybe that's just the offense. Those are questions that you're going to have to answer with the coaching staff and pro day and evaluating the kid. Also, he doesn't really have a lot of dog in him when the ball's not going to him as far as the blocking ability, right? He's not really a useful player in that way. He's still super dynamic as just an overall playmaker, but I probably would have Jeanty over Burden.
Let's see, I'm trying to think of some other names that would be out there. Egbuka.
I'd have Jeanty over Egbuka.
Okay. Malachi Starks.
I probably would have him over Malachi Starks as well.
Okay, so for the most part,
conversation of where the Broncos are at in a team building. I know there's some thoughts like Denver shouldn't take a running back early. You're still a draft or 2 away. You're drafting Jeanty for the duration of his rookie contract to pair him with Bo Nix on his rookie contract. You're going to want to have a good run game, and it's mostly about the offensive line. The offensive line is pretty well built. So I think, you pair that with even if you get Jeanty for just, let's say, 6, 7, or let's even say 5 years. 5 years is a pretty long time. And to match that up with Bo Nix's contract with where Denver is currently in the team build with, the Chiefs maybe coming to a soft rebuild as well, I'm about it. So I don't know. There's not many guys. I don't think there's that many actually true first-round picks in this class either. So again, the more I talk about it, I'll be pretty shocked if Jeanty is there at 20. But there's been enough. There's been enough out there from people connected to the draft, the NFL teams, and big draft media that have put him there that at least we can squint and picture it right now.
Yeah, like I said, it's hard when it is such a deep position. So how much of a drop-off for you is there from Jenton to, say, Hampton? I'm guessing most people have him number 2 on their board.
Hampton, I think, is probably more of like one of the first picks in the second round, where I think Jeanty and big board wise probably will finish somewhere like 25 to 35 rank, where Jeanty is going to end up somewhere like on big boards, probably 4 to 8, right? And maybe that gap is too big. Hampton's a heck of a player too. He's somebody that if Denver didn't get a running back at pick 20, I'd be more than okay trading back up to the early second to get him, or trading down from 20 and targeting him. I think there's a lot of really good players in that 30 to 40 range on a lot of these big boards that I'd love to double dip and get 2 of them, or in the very least, trade back, get surplus value and get 1 of them there. But yeah, Jeanty he's a heck of a player. Can do a little bit of everything. This last season, they didn't really utilize him as much in the pass game. I don't think that's because the year before he was the number 1 reception leader at running back in college football, I believe. So it's not that he can't do it. It's just like if we throw it to him, there's a chance that it's incomplete or the quarterback messes up. Why don't we just hand him the ball and take out the middleman there? You know, to a certain extent, it's working. So yeah, Jeanty'd be awesome. We'll see. I look through the draft right now in the order of teams, and I always get pushback on this too. I think I just have a more holistic, big picture view on the draft than a lot of people. But when you look at the landing spots for Jeanty, I think probably the earliest is 6 with the Raiders. They have a pretty good offensive line already, honestly. Pete Carroll's there. You know, they're going to want the football. And again, if they're not getting quarterback and Graham, Carter / Hunter are gone, I mean, I could see it. I also think at 10 overall, the Bears make a lot of sense with Ben Johnson. They need to fix the offensive line. They need to help Caleb Williams as well. And I think Jeanty makes some sense there. 11, you know, McCaffrey might be being phased out. Obviously, the Cowboys at 12, 13 with the Dolphins. They have A-Chain. A-Chain's a glorified gadget player, right? They took a other running back last season. Did we see him? No. Jeanty'd make a lot of Mike McDaniel was the freaking run game coordinator for the 49ers for a number of years. They want to protect Tua. Jeanty makes a lot of sense at 13 as well. You have the Cardinals at 16. That's another team that really wants to run the football. 17. Oh, the Bengals have to go defense. They probably want to go defense, but wouldn't it be nice to have a running back like Jeanty? I mean, to shorten the games, help your quarterback as well. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not just your first round pick that you can add resources to a team. You have free agency, you have the rest of the draft. Draft the best players. So again, I think there's a lot of pitfalls for Jeanty, and we'll see. I do find it interesting though that teams, these prominent mockers, keep matching Jeanty with Denver. I don't know if it's the fact that he falls or they think Sean Payton might want to trade up for that guy, but we'll see. We'll see. Talking about trades, though, Cody W. coming in says, if the Broncos traded a first for a veteran, who are you wanting? Interesting. I mean, gosh, Cody, I mean, this is the answer for me is Myles Garrett. The best player at the most valuable position other than quarterback that could be available is Myles Garrett. So, I mean, gosh, I was against him during the draft because there was some background stuff. But at this point, also, like Micah Parsons was available, right? And, you know, everything else cleared in the background stuff. He's been clean in the NFL as far as I know. He's probably, honest to God, probably Parsons the most valuable defensive trade asset in the entire league, right? Like Surtain is better, but the cornerback's depreciated compared to pass rusher. Just look at the market value. I think Parsons or Garrett would completely change the dynamic of your team.
So Garrett Wilson, would you rather have Garrett Wilson or Ashton Jeanty?
I think I'd probably rather have Jeanty just because of the years of control.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. And I think you can find a good number 2 wide receiver many different ways. You know, free agency, I know there's some links right now between the Broncos and Deebo Samuel. The Broncos might be trying to trade possibly like a day 3 pick to get him. And, you know, I saw you on Twitter kind of posted about that of, hey, if it's a 6th round pick, maybe that's worth it. You know, if you can get the contract reworked to have it be more incentive based and you get a guy like that fits well, does a lot of the things that Sean Payton likes to do with those kind of wide receivers, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think you need an all-star wide receiver to make Sean Payton's system work. You know, I'm not saying he hasn't had him before. I'm just saying there's a lot of times where he has a pretty decent no-name group of wide receivers. He has maybe one name one, and the rest of them are no-name. And he can scheme plays open for a lot of guys. And but running back, there's just so many things that he could do with a guy like Jeanty, especially as a receiving option. It wouldn't surprise me if he had 80 targets his rookie season.
Yeah. And
teams having to respect him coming out of the backfield. And it really changes the numbers of how a team can try to play the Broncos when you've got a running back of that level.
Yeah. The one thing I'd be curious about with Jeanty is how it might change with Bo Nix's utilization of shotgun versus under center and how that might look for the offense. But again, he is quick enough, strong enough. I'm not worried about him in pass protection. He's not the best pass protecting back in the draft. That probably is Travion Henderson, excuse me. But I mean, he can do everything pretty well. And, Sean Payton, he doesn't use a bell cow. That's because there's too many freaking touches to go around for any bell cow to even be used, right? It'd be a super bell cow. No, I mean, there's enough for two, if you want to call it that, there's enough for two bell cows on this offense with how many actual touches there are to go around. But I think Jeanty is somebody to make a heck of a lot of sense for Denver. Again, it would just completely change the floor of the offense. You'd have easy answers. You'd add success rate to the offensive ground game. You'd be a lot better on first and second down. The play action stuff you'd be able to do. I mean, even just adding Bo Nix, and now it's not a shock. We can kind of talk about the data or whatever. Like, he threw a lot of balls deep this season. Yes, he did. He also threw a lot of balls behind the line of scrimmage. Just did. I don't know where he ranked. Definitely top 5. And a lot of that's a lot of the reason Javonte Williams had so many targets. Now you add somebody like Jeanty, where a single, instead of swinging for the fences, a single turns into a home run because Jeanty makes a guy miss or, beats somebody to the corner and is gone. I mean, just adding those low risk plays that can actually become explosives would be so huge for the offense. So I'm all about it. Now, am I so about Jeanty that I'd be trading up into the top 10 to get him? No. If he falls to, 15, I'm probably calling the Falcons saying like, hey, would you like 1 in our 3? Maybe you send back a future 5th or something. That's the Falcons need picks. That's something I'd be interested in. But we'll see. He's a heck of a pick. And what did Field Yates even say, Carl? We probably should, get into that. Talking about the Broncos at 20. He says it was hard to go 19 picks without Jeanty coming off the board. He's one of my 5 highest ranked players in the class, but he also plays the deepest position in this draft and one which many teams philosophically are not inclined to use a premium pick. But this would be a dream scenario for the Broncos. They tied for 20th in yards per rush, and Javonte Williams is a free agent. Jeanty would take over the lead role behind an excellent offensive line. The Broncos ranked first in run block win rate. I take that with a grain of salt, but I think they're top, 10, 12 run blocking offensive line. And pair with second-year quarterback Bo Nix to give Sean Payton an offensive boost. Jeanty can be a Pro Bowl player very early in his career, I would say day 1, as his speed, power, and contact balance and receiving profile are all excellent. He ran for 2,601 yards this past season. That doesn't even get to the receiving yards he had the year prior. He'd be a slam dunk pick. He'd be a slam dunk pick for the Broncos. I'm a running back don't matter guy. For the window, for where they're at right now, this team is ready for a cherry on top on offense while you're still building. You're in a competitive window right now. It makes all the sense in the world to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we have David coming in on our other subject of the day with the $4.99 super saying, do you anticipate Darren Rizzi being named Broncos special teams coordinator before the combine? And 2, what edge prospects would be good value for the Broncos at 20? So yes, I do expect Rizzi in the next probably week to be named for the Broncos special teams coordinator. It's been his job. If he didn't get the head coaching job there in New Orleans, it's pretty much he's coming to Denver. So I do expect that to happen. Edge prospects, I mean, it's a pretty decent class. Or here at the top, Abdul Carter, of course. If he's there, you would run to the podium and say, "What is every other team in the league doing?"
That would actually be like, is there a felony involved here? Like if he fell,
it's true. Something happened.
If he falls to 20, he's probably fallen out of the draft. That kind of thing.
That's a good point. Would you take Mike Green there at 20?
I'd think about it. I mean, it depends on who else is available. But
yeah,
also a lot of it depends on. I'm very curious. We'll have plenty of offseason to talk about this. I don't want to spend too much time on it, even though I really do appreciate the super chat, David. But like, does Nick Benito's contract play into this at all? Like, if you approach Nick Benito being like, "We'll pay you $17 million a year," and he's like, "I want $28 million a year," holy cow, we're not paying you $28 million a year. Maybe we actually need to think about, shipping you while the price is high, and would that change things? Very, not likely to happen. But I mean, what's the inner workings with that contract stuff with him? What do they think behind closed doors? I mean, he had a great season. He's improved every year too, and I really respect how much he's grown. I mean, he obviously is a very hard worker, and he's a very dynamic player all the same. But there's a big difference between, those top 5 to 10 well-rounded guys and Benito, who had a great statistical season. So that's something where I think what's the inner workings of the Benito contract look like would influence me a lot at edge.
So do you think the Broncos right now are kind of kicking themselves for signing Cooper to a long-term deal?
I don't know if kicking themselves is the right word. He's a consistent player. I think you also paid for like the locker room aspect. I mean, even if he's like, you're paying him what? Is it the 25th or 30th highest paid APY edge rushing contract? You have a little bit of money to spend. I think there's something to rewarding those hardworking kind of guys in the room, especially if they're not absolutely breaking the bank. That said, I think he's probably best as a 2 or 3. Benito's probably best as a 2. We don't know about Ellis yet. 1 year. I mean, again, it's day 2 pick, 1 year. We'll wait and see. And Tillman looks like a hell of a find as an undrafted free agent. I'm pretty happy with like the 4 they have. I just wish they had a more premium, well-rounded 1. And again, that's Benito's a good player. Like, don't get me wrong. Like a lot of teams would kill to have Benito, but I think you see if you have a transcendent pass rusher at edge, it really changes things. I don't know if Benito is that level. He's very good. I'm talking Pro Bowl versus All Pro.
Do you have anybody other than Carter that could become that in this draft?
I think Jalen Walker's in the conversation. I know he played more linebacker at Georgia, but he's long. He's physical. I've questions about the bend, but I don't know, man. His explosiveness, how much power, speed to power he converts, the closing speed, what I've heard about his character. I know PFF has him like in the 50s somewhere, but I don't know. What did we just see with Nolan Smith do in the Super Bowl this season? He's only 245 pounds. He plays like he's 260. I mean, those pullers, he gets under them and destroys them. Walker's got that ability too. He tossed in Mike Green. I think he's in the conversation. I think you also have to have a conversation about Mykel Williams at Georgia, as well as Shamar Stewart, both guys who are more tools than output at this point.
Right.
But, I mean, you've done pretty well with that. You have a chance to take a developmental guy that could become a true number 1. I mean, they're in the conversation, right? So those are the ones who stand out for me. Pierce, I don't think is a good enough run profile for Denver for what we need compared to the room that's already there. So those are the, what do we say? 5 guys. I think Mike Green's also in the conference. 5 guys at edge that are, well, I don't think Carter's in the conversation, but that would be, if they were there, you'd have to probably run to the podium or consider.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because you've talked about before of you keep adding logs to the fire, keep it going. You want to keep that edge room looking strong. And if you can get it stronger, the Broncos had the most sacks in the NFL this last year, but I don't think you can say that they have an elite front 4 that can get after the quarterback. They're all good. That's part of why they could get as many sacks as they did. But like I said, you don't have that true elite guy. Okay, Allen, he's right there. He's right on the edge.
Yeah.
But the other guys, like I said, you need somebody. You look at what the Eagles were able to do with their Force Sweat. He's up there. Jalen Carter from the interior part of it. And so the Broncos, it was a lot of, pressures coming where they were blitzing early in, first and second down, kind of surprising teams with how they were trying to attack. And so that's a little bit of how they were able to do it, which is, it works to a point. But then when you get against some of these really, really great teams that are smart and see when it's coming and can block it up, and then you don't have the horses on the back end to cover for 3-4 seconds, you're in trouble. And like when Riley Moss went down, that became a problem. When teams started figuring out our linebackers can't do man coverage, that became a huge problem. So you're right. Like if there's an edge guy that falls and it becomes between them and Jeanty, I'm probably still going to lean towards an edge guy just because I'd still like to find our next great edge guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like edge is probably more of a 2020. It's just a lot of it depends on Benito, right? Because I really do like Ellis taking the step forward and what Tillman provided in depth. You locked up with Cooper. So really, you don't have snaps for 5 edges. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking for one. It probably means that somebody's getting peeled off and traded in all reality. But again, you have to consider it because it's just such a valuable position. It's a heavily rotated position as well. But right now, I think path to playing time, probably defensive tackle, makes a lot more sense if you're talking
right.
Getting after the guys for how the room is built. But yeah, edge is interesting. We'll have plenty of time to see. I mean, also, we didn't even talk about Shamar Stewart might be somebody who can play edge early and then kick into 4i in sub packages and be reduced there because he is physical enough, long enough, big profile. Sometimes it's better in theory than reality because sometimes those guys also have to, be able to hang against doubles and sink their hips and anchor in the run game. But again, being a unique player. And you mentioned it already. The Broncos, a lot of sacks last season. You can't take that away. They were great, but they also were the heaviest blitzing team in football this season. That was much more predicated on having Patrick Surtain on the back end. I also think it was a little bit trying to protect your linebackers rather than have them in coverage, send them forward, be proactive in the gaps versus having them be reactive in coverage. And also like somebody like, again, Nick Benito. You design up some free rushers or one-on-ones for Nick Benito. Hell yeah. That's great. Double teams, trying to fight through two, an extra guy to be over there to help. I mean, it gets a little bit trickier. So like you see all those ESPN graphics, like the one-on-one rate or the double team rate, like Denver was always like almost dead last. Even for like, your big guys like Malcolm Roach and DJ Jones, they weren't really asking them to take on too many doubles because of their blitz centric defense. And that obviously worked for Denver this season from a macro perspective. But as we saw with the Eagles and Denver going against some of these better drop back quarterbacks, they can, find where the blitzer is coming from and throw the football where the void is from where that blitzer is coming. So it's a little bit harder against those quarterbacks. Either way, I don't think it's a bad strategy to keep adding pass rushers and defensive front players. It's a very high floor move for a team.
Yeah, I mean, not that you can completely copy what the Eagles have done. They have a few other things that the Broncos don't have yet, and you probably can't get this year. But like I said, they really focused on the trenches. You look at their drafting, offensive tackle, edge, defensive line. Like those were a lot of the positions they focused on early in the draft. They had wide receivers too. Don't get me wrong. They took other positions, but for the most part, they seem to focus in the trenches. And so if you can add a guy that you feel like can be a contributor now and in the future, it's going to be hard to pass that up. Even if it is Jeanty sitting there. I mean, I think that there's only a few names that I would take over him, but they'd probably fall within that defensive line, maybe a couple edge guys. Offensive line, like I said, I think we're set. I really can't see the Broncos going offensive line in the first in this one.
I think we had the chat's kind of talking about him a little bit. Like I think Gray Zabel is at least a little bit of a dark horse there because Sean Payton has really emphasized the offensive line. Zabel could play center or guard, and Wattenberg was the weakness of that unit, and turning a positive into the identity of your team. I think there is something to be said about that. It's hard with Zabel because obviously his tape is, Division II or FCS or whatever it is at North Dakota State. And he's playing left tackle. So really what you're going off of is the Senior Bowl and everything else. But if you bring him in, you're blown away. He tests well. The 20-yard shuttle is super important for interior offensive linemen. There's some metric that's like, yeah, all the guys who have a good number here are superstars. Even guys who fall end up being quality starters, like Pooney last year fell round 4, and he's really damn good guard for the 49ers. But I think Zabel's at least in the conversation right now, this far out from the draft, because of how he would amplify the room. You could find a running back later. Also, just the reality doesn't mean it's going to be reality forever, but you digging through the data, Bo Nix was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL this season under pressure. And that's doesn't mean it's going to be that way forever. But he wasn't pressured very often because of the offensive line. Some of that's to credit the Knicks as well. But when he was actually under duress, I think it was the worst EPA per play under pressure with qualifying dropbacks this season. So continue to have the offensive line, I think, is a dark horse perspective for the team. Now, taking a center round 1, I don't always love the value there, but again, conversation at this point.
Yeah, I guess I could understand it because, like I said, you're protecting your biggest asset on the team for the next few years, where you've got this unit that's going to be together for quite a while here. And I mean, we saw Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl. There's some plays, even against a team like the Chiefs, where he had 3, 4, 5 seconds to sit back there, scan the field, and somebody's going to get open eventually. And then you've got that big bruising unit that can just move people. I mean, it makes it nice where you need a yard, because I remember there's one year for the Broncos where like 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, they picked it up less than 50% of the time because their offensive line was just terrible. Their running backs couldn't get any kind of push. And if you can't pick up 1 yard, that's a problem. But the Eagles, knowing, they're at the goal line, we're going to win this. We're going to push them 4 yards into the end zone, even though they're the Chiefs and showed 2 weeks ago before against the Bills, they could stop them. It was pretty awesome to see the Eagles just pretty much just handle that situation to that level. I think that was probably the point for the Chiefs. They're going, oh crap, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
If we really can't stop this, I don't know what we're going to do, because they're going to run this probably a lot. And I think that was the only time they actually ran it in the game. But still, when it's there and teams just sit there and say, no matter what we do, we can't stop it. That's something amazing to have in the NFL.
Yeah. It would be great. I mean, Denver, again, you're picking 20. It's so many options at that point. Right now, it's probably leaning towards offensive weapon or interior defensive lineman, just from the perspective of where the value is at in the class. But again, the dark horses right now, I think for Denver would be Gray Zabel, or maybe somebody like a Jahdae Barron, safety / nickelback from Texas, who Jaquan McMillan's a fine player. I think he could also move to safety and be fine, but you're looking for another safety and Swiss Army knife who can play all those spots, hands on the football, good tackler. That was my other takeaway from obviously the big takeaway from the Eagles game was getting home with 4 consistently changes everything. Cause then, it's harder to throw into space if there's less guys blitzing and more guys in coverage. Yes, of course. But the other takeaway I had was being so sound physically, discipline wise, and tackling with your back 7 is a huge takeaway as well. You can't have a +1. Guys who aren't physical coming down, tackling, wrapping up, stopping at the point as well. Not, this BS, you wrap up a guy and then he drags you another 7 yards. Like the Bills game is still driving me nuts. I'm so irritated about the tackling from the middle spine of the defense in that one. But no, that's another big takeaway. I think being able to play nickel and it tackles like base is a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't given you a chance to talk about your boy Cooper DeJean yet.
Yeah. Yep,
what a game for him.
I mean, what a season. Heck of a player, man. It fell to pick 40. That's another thing. You can have all these dreams about where you want to go in the draft, and the Eagles have used, during Howie Roseman's tenure, 10 of their 15 first-round picks when they've selected a player has been a trench player. So 2/3. That's a pretty high freaking rate there. But they've also sat there and let the board come to them and, not been in too much of a desperation mode for, I have to take tight end here. I have to take blah, blah, blah. No, that's not how you play the draft game big picture, because you're not drafting running backs for the rookie season. You're drafting them for the duration of their contract. And guess what? Every single thing over a 4 or 5 year span can become a need pretty darn quickly. So keep drafting the best players.
Yeah, I think that's something I try to always tell everybody every year. Keep this in mind, that the draft is more than the first round pick. I know everybody kind of gets locked in, for a while there. I know a lot of people, it's got to be Tyler Warren. I don't think he's going to be there at pick 20. But I mean, we still have a lot of combine. If he runs a slow combine, you never know what's going to happen there. But no, I think, like I said, if you take, say, defensive line in the first, that doesn't mean your run game is going to be terrible. It doesn't mean that you failed at tight end. It just means that you saw the value of a player that could be, like you said, a contributor possibly this year, but especially year 2, 3, 4, and 5 of their contract. And that's going to be huge for the Broncos moving forward. And so you can't just be thinking 2025. You've got to be looking at the bigger picture of everything that's going on. And I mean, we've already talked about running back. If you miss on Jeanty, there's another 10, 15 guys that I promise if you watch them, you are going to like them, possibly love them. Tight end. You don't get Warren, there's a lot of decent names out there for this draft that could really become something in the NFL. Yeah. And we've seen a lot of first-round tight ends don't become much in the NFL.
Yep.
It's a tough position to figure out.
Yeah. hit rate's not good on the tight end. But again, you're evaluating the individual. Yeah, you can look at the historical data and what it says and what it means. But at the end of the day, you are drafting individuals, right? That if you take let's say Nick Amanawari and safety, there's not actually many good difference-making safeties out there, but he ends up being, the next Kyle Hamilton. Like, that's a good pick, right? Like, a probability would say it's risky, but, you got to have some conviction. There are those guys that exist still all the same. So we'll see what happens with that. Other guys are just kind of running through Field Yates's mock before we get out of here, just kind of paint the landscape. Travis Hunter going 1 overall, Abdul Carter 2, Cam Ward 3, Will Campbell 4, offensive tackle LSU, Mason Graham, defensive tackle from Michigan 5, Shadur Sanders 6, Colorado quarterback, Michael Williams going 7 to the Jets, edge rusher. 8 was Jalen Walker. That's a guy who intrigues the heck out of me. I don't think he's going to fall. I was starting to get some, hopes of grandeur there with him, or whatever the phrase is, because with PFF was so low on him. But I'm like, okay, well, this is more likely. Walker going up there. Tedero McMillan at 9. He's another one I feel like we'll see after the combine. I don't think he's going to run very well, and maybe he starts to slip a bit. And he's one that intrigues the heck out of me for the Broncos. Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle from Texas, going 10. Josh Simmons, offensive tackle, going 11. Will Johnson, cornerback, Michigan, going 12. Tyler Booker, guard, Alabama, going 13. Tyler Warren going to the Colts at 14, Penn State. Mike Green, edge Marshall, going to Atlanta. Shamar Stewart, edge, going to the Cardinals at 16. Walter Nolan. So this is kind of a range of some guys that interest. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle, Ole Miss, going 17. Membu, offensive tackle / guard, going 18. And then you have James Pierce Jr. going edge at Tennessee. After that, Jackson Dart, there's a shocker, going to 21. Quarterback, Ole Miss. Colston Loveland, tight end, going 22 to the Chargers. Maxwell Harrison, Kentucky cornerback, 23. There's Derek Harmon to the Vikings at 24, defensive tackle. Luther Burden, 25 to the Texans. And Starks going to the Ravens. Interesting pairing with Hamilton there. Zabel, not too early for Zabel. Zabel going 28 to the Lions there. Egbuka going to the Commanders at 29. Grant going to the Bills at 30. And then Jackson and Campbell going 31 and 32. So, again, I don't think it's an overly unbelievable first round this season. There's going to be talent to be had. I'm much more interested in day 2 for a lot of these guys. So we'll see. Omarion Hampton doesn't make the cut there. Elijah Arroyo, tight end from Miami. Mason Taylor, tight end from LSU. Trayvon Henderson, Ohio State running back. Caleb Johnson, Iowa running back. There's still, if Denver didn't end up Jeanty, they've had some options there a little later on.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think passing on the running back or tight end position limits the Broncos from having an impact player moving forward. So lots of ways the Broncos can get better. And Cody W. coming in with the $2 super chat saying, what if Bo would have ran his 40? Would Bo have been there at pick 12? That's a tough question. He runs like a 4.5 40. Maybe he goes about quarterback number 4.
I mean, it's so hard to say, right?
Yeah.
Like, what matters more is the interviews and the tape. Like, 40 is nice, but the 40, you're more likely just like, you're verifying what the tape told you. So, like, if something's way out of range, you're not going to grade a guy twice for being fast. Like, Worthy last season, he broke the 40. Like, that's great. He was already fast on tape. Like, how much difference does a 4.3 compared to a 4.22 actually make compared to the playing speed? I'm not going to give him double points for being that. Now, if Bo Nix, ran as you said, 4.5, maybe it would send me back to the tape and question things, but is it going to change his draft grade for the quarterback position compared to his tape as a thrower, pocket manipulator, the meeting with the teams? I don't think so. But again, it's another data point. You never know, right? Maybe it just sends one team back to the tape and dig a little harder, and there's some click there or epiphany. I don't know. But I guess not, just because I don't think it matters that much for the quarterback testing.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing we saw this year wasn't really the speed. It was the creativity in his running that I think really made the bigger difference. His ability to get a pass rusher that had a beeline straight for him and, throw him off and then go run for 20 yards. And, he just has a really different running style where it's not so much that he is the greatest athlete at quarterback. He's a good athlete. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but he's a smart runner. which is the really nice thing for the Broncos, is knowing that he's not going to put himself in terrible position. He's not going to take the big hit. He might go pick up the first down with his feet, but he's not going to do it having to ram into 3 people. And, that's probably my biggest worry for Jaden Daniels in the career that he can have. I think he can have a Hall of Fame career with the way that he played this year. But I really question his ability to hold up, because there's just so many times, instead of sliding down, he decides, I'm going to pick up those extra 3 yards. And I'm sorry, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it for me to have my quarterback miss 3 to 4 games a year because they had to pick up those extra yards and take the extra beating every game. But not a beating is Michael coming in saying, great show tonight, Nick and Carl, on building the Broncos. Go Bo Broncos. Go Michael. Thank you very much for that. And it's been a fun show with all you guys. I really do appreciate it. We're in my favorite time of the year, getting to talk draft prospects and what the Broncos could be doing. And obviously, like I said, that dream scenario, Ashton Jeanty falling to the Broncos and giving them a legit running game. I really do that more so than, what if Bo Nix. To me, I'm kind of thinking, what if this offense had a run game, a consistent run game? Yeah. What could they have really been this year? What games would they have won? Maybe that Chiefs game in Arrowhead. Maybe it doesn't come down to that last second field goal because you've been eating up clock and making the Chiefs have to really defend the entire field.
Yeah.
I don't think you beat the Bills just because you had Ashton Jeanty, because the Bills just destroyed the Broncos in that one. They need some other pieces on the defense to make that a closer game. But still, like I said, it'd just be one of those pieces that you don't have right now that are an absolute necessity, especially with Sean Payton. He loves running backs. Probably no coach values them more than Sean Payton.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, Michael, coming in. And I heard a baby screaming for about 10 minutes now, so I better go to save my wife here. But hopefully you guys don't hear it picking up on the mic. So appreciate everyone coming in today with the super chats. David Youngkin, of course, Papa Bear, Michael Ronque a few times, Phil, happy belated birthday for you, Cody W a few times. We got our guy David Carmelo as well. Appreciate all you guys coming in and hanging out with us today with the super chats. Also appreciate all the likes and reacts in there. If you guys haven't done so yet, follow us over on Twitter. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Carl's at Carl Dumler MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, we're over at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, please subscribe, like, and share. And tomorrow, make sure you guys tune in. Also going to be the last official show with Scott and I, because Scott's moving on to bigger and better things. He's evolved past little old Nick over here. So appreciate him. We'll see him again tomorrow morning. It won't be totally goodbye, though. We'll still be hanging out and talking ball, of course. But appreciate everyone. Have a great rest of your night. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. And, of course, as always, go Broncos.